and welcome to a very unusual Fed Flash Face-Off for July 23rd. Why did I give you the date? Well, it's because we're actually going to have two shows this week. Normally we have one weekly show. This time we're breaking it up, and we'll talk about why in just a second. Of course, I am Gary Ryan, the Fed East Flash. So glad that you could join me for this show. Thank you so much. I just stepped on this side of the camera so I can put all my fancy graphics over here. How about that? All right, getting on with the show. I want to talk about what we're doing today. First of all, lots of news this week. This is going to be a heavy news week, which is one of the reasons why I'm breaking this into two parts for this week. Okay, first we have daily announcements this week by the FPHL, leading up to the big release of the schedule this Friday, which will be tomorrow. Okay, first of all, Monday we had the announcement about home openers, who's playing who and when and where. We had our announcement on Tuesday about where your team fits in, all the alignments, all that kind of stuff. Wednesday, they recapped, and I think it's very good that they did this. They recapped the point system, the 3-point system that the league uses to calculate wins, losses, all that kind of stuff, points. And for those of you who are new to the Fed, Fresno, Stockton, Oceanside, Minnesota, Mid-South, you may not be familiar with the 3-point system. So we're going to talk a little bit about that as the league does. Okay, also, I'm sure between now, when I'm recording this on Sunday, and when I release this, there's going to be some trades, there's going to be some signings, some significant signings. So we want to talk about all that. That's in news and notes. And then we get into the nitty-gritty topic. Why? This is a question that people have been asking for a good 3 seasons now. Why doesn't the league do something about the salary cap, to enforcing it more stringently? Okay, we all know, those of us who have been around the Fed for a while, and for those of you who are new to the Fed, here's a newsflash: there's a lot of money that gets handed under the table to players. Why does that happen? Why doesn't the league do something about that? There's actually a reason, and we will talk about it. There's actually 3 sides to this argument, and we'll examine all 3 sides. So that's our topic for the day. So, little controversy, maybe, but all in all, it's going to be a wild discussion. So I'm glad that you could join me for that. All right, well, so let's go on Sunday. Just a mention real quick. Sunday, first of all, going to announce our new sponsor that's joining us on the show. Also, we're going to be talking about the announcement that is made on Friday, which is the release of the schedule. We're going to break it down, find some oddities, find some unusual parts of the schedule, break it all down. How many games does your team play against your closest rival? How much travel is involved this year? All that kind of stuff. We're going to break it down. So make sure that you are subscribed and hit that notification bell, so when Sunday's show comes out, because it's going to be later in the day, it's probably going to be early evening, you'll know it's there and you can watch. All right, so that's what's going on this week. In the meantime, always remember, if you have any questions, comments, if you're a sponsor interested in setting up a partnership with me, sponsoring either a part of the video or the entire thing, contact me. The address, fedflash15@gmail.com. Also, remember, I'm on Facebook. Make sure to follow me there, because as news happens, I print it there, and then we talk about it here. And also, I have my WordPress page talking about Fed history, the early years of the Fed. So all of that. All right, we've covered all of the preliminary stuff. Let's just get into the show already. So just like the videos being divided into two halves this week, I'm also kind of dividing up news and notes as well. This segment here basically covering what we had from the weekend and Monday and Tuesday, and then the other segment that we have coming up after our talk about the salary cap is primarily from what happened on Wednesday, specifically the jersey and name reveal for Baton Rouge. So we'll go on with that. So anyway, we did have quite a few PTO signings. Now, a lot of these signings are collegiate graduates and people coming out of juniors, really people we're not really familiar with. But I do want to mention some notable names that did come up in the listing of people who signed PTOs. Okay, Danbury re-signing with the team, or at least signing a PTO, was Grady Friedman. Now, Friedman joined the Hat Tricks very late last year. But when he started playing, boy, he was good. I had the honor to watch him play in person with the Hat Tricks when we had that neutral site game in New Jersey this last March. And I believe he had a goal and assist in that game, if memory serves correctly. 9 games played. He had 6 goals, had a couple goals in one game. So, yeah, he looks good. He's got some good size. He's got some good speed. And so he is going to be back with the Hat Tricks this next year, and he will be a good addition, I am sure. The Twin City Thunderbirds announced coming back yet again, one more time maybe. We'll see. Yuri Pastuka. Now, Pastuka's been around for quite a while. He's been with the Thunderbirds organization for a number of years, but he actually played with the Mentor Icebreakers before COVID and whatnot. He needs 26 more points to reach 400 in his career, and that is quite an accomplishment. So, yeah, I know Thunderbirds fans are very, very excited to have Pastuka back. Obviously, he can play either forward or defense, so that's a good add for the Thunderbirds. And yeah, the Sentinels have a couple players coming back. First, Denver Craig. Now, Craig was traded to Blue Ridge. It was one of those weird trades last year that was kind of like a loan, and his rights deferred back to Indiana at the end of the year. So in 25 games combined with Indiana and Blue Ridge, he had 26 points. So yeah, also spent some time in the SP as well. Corey Cunningham is also back. Cunningham, a rough year last year, 55 games played amongst 3 different teams, Indiana, Twin City, and Monroe. And 13 goals, 14 assists. Not shabby, 55 games. But yeah, he's capable of a lot more. He's shown in the past that he can, if he is given a regular chance to play regular shifts, top shifts, that he can put up a lot of points. He's very sneaky up front, in the crease. So yeah, good ad for Indiana. And then Blue Ridge announced that coming back is defenseman Philippe Levac, 47 games played last year, 4 game-winning goals as a defenseman, 31 points overall, and he was a plus 18. So he was really, really a very steady performer for the Bobcats last year, and he's back. So Bobcats they're looking like they're going to have a real good year this year. Okay, there was one trade, and that was between the Danbury Hat Tricks and the Indiana Sentinels. The Sentinels send defensiveman Colin Tracy to Danbury. Danbury wanted some size. Tracy's 6'3", on the good defensiveman there. Played in 10 games, 3 assists, and he was even for a plus minus with Indiana. Remember, so Indiana did struggle for much of the year as far as keeping the puck out of the net. Although the last half of the year, they weren't too bad in that department. So anyway, Colin Tracy is now with the Hat Tricks, and going to Indiana are a pair of players. First, forward Milan Brezko. He played 46 games combined with Blue Ridge and Danbury, 17 points. And then also forward Brendan Lynch, who only had a chance to play one game with Danbury last year, but he is a highly regarded prospect out of Southern New Hampshire University, and so he will be joining the Sentinels now. All right, let's recap what happened on Monday and Tuesday. First of all, on Monday, we had all our home openers announced. I'm not going to go through the whole list again. You can always refer to that on the FPHL website. It'll be under the tab up at the top. If you see the tab that says Save the Date and click Read More, has the whole list of all the games that are taking place as far as home openers. All right, because of course, as I'm recording this and as you're watching this, we haven't seen the full schedule yet. That is coming on Friday. All right, so on October 9th, Friday, October 9th, there will be 3 games played, just 3. And this is a usual thing. You just have a few of the teams starting the first weekend, and then the second weekend is when everything really picks up, and you're going to have all 17 teams probably in action. But anyway, for the first opening night game, the very first game that you're going to have an opportunity to watch is the Minnesota Northern Lights traveling to Indiana to take on the Sentinels at the Ham. That's at 7:30 Eastern. That's the first game of the year. Then shortly after that, 8 o'clock, we have the Mid-South Monarchs going down to Monroe, taking on the Monroe Moccasins, and that is a Friday and Saturday series, as is the Indiana series as well. So that's going to be 8 o'clock. And then I don't know yet the start time for the third and final game, which is the Oceanside FPHLers, as I'm calling them for now, against the Fresno Falcons in Fresno, Selland Arena. And again, I don't have a time for that right now, but those are the 3 games that are going to be taking place on the very first night. Okay, on Tuesday, we learned all about the divisional alignment, and I'm sure that is still a topic for much discussion. Let's clear this out. And, okay, let's move this back. Okay. There we go. Okay, so yeah, there we go. There's all the teams in their divisional alignments there. The Western Conference here, the Eastern Conference there. Okay, so we do have one division with 5 teams because, of course, we have 17 teams total. 16 divided by 4 is 4 each, but then we got to throw in number 17. All right. A lot of people, when they got the news of this, okay, I feel like there's a couple things that aren't being understood, so I want to kind of go over this one more time and lay everything out, reading some excerpts from the post that came from the FPHL that kind of illuminates some of the specifics on this. Okay, first of all, 4 divisions, and the reason for that is, as they put it, the FPHL. It's a new map establishing a competitive framework designed to grow with us. So, in other words, this isn't just for this year. This is for moving forward as well. As we get more teams, we know we're going to have a lot more teams out west. The hope is another 5. That's the goal. And so then that way, you got 4 divisions all set. If there are 4 teams or 5 teams coming in next year, well, that could bring the league, the 2022 teams. Hopefully everybody's around for 2027. I think so. My apologies for the Zydeco logo. I know, because they're not the Zydeco anymore, but I didn't have time to make a new magnet. So yeah, this will probably be the last time you'll see the Zydeco logo. All right. So yeah, we have the 5 teams out west, the farthest teams to the west. So you have the Fresno Falcons, Minnesota Northern Lights, Oceanside FPHLers. Get a name, please. Stockton Thunder and the Topeka Scarecrows. And then in the Delta Division, which is the other division making up the Western Conference, we have Baton Rouge, Columbus, Mid-South, and Monroe. So now that's the Western Division, so 9 and 8. Okay, in the Eastern Conference, we have the Great Lakes Division, and it's Indiana, Monroe, my goodness, Motor City, Port Huron, and Watertown. Watertown seems like the odd duck here, and geographically, yes, maybe, but got some details with this. Okay, in the Atlantic Division, you have Binghamton, Blue Ridge, Danbury, and Twin City. So there we go. Now, a couple of things that I really want to stress that, again, I'm just reading excerpts from the FPHL release that came out on Tuesday. The alignment was developed through extensive Board of Governors review, team input. So the teams had a say. We'd really like to be with this team or that team. We'd really like to be in this region. Okay, if you got 4 divisions, we prefer to be in this one. This was taken into account. Okay, so alignment developed through extensive Board of Governor review, team input, the league office coordination, geography, travel practicality, regional relationship, competition, and fan experience were all considered together in mapping this out. All right, so this wasn't just like they threw a whole bunch of names in a hat and pulled it. Oh, Watertown. It wasn't like that at all. Okay, again, they got feedback from the team. They looked at things from a practical standpoint, and it is very important to realize and understand that just because Watertown is within the Great Lakes Division does not mean that they are going to be forced to do extra travel. Same with Twin City, okay? Twin City is going to play Columbus. I don't know how many times, but we'll see quite a few matchups there. They'll probably also play some of these other teams in the Delta division as well, I would imagine. Plus their usual 12 to 14 games against Blue Ridge. But they're also going to be playing Binghamton. They're also going to play Danbury. So Watertown, in the meantime, they are still going to have a big chunk of their games. Their most common opponents are still going to be Danbury and Binghamton, even though they are in a different division. Same conference, different divisions. All right, so that was taken into account. The league is not going to expect Watertown to play 14 games against Port Huron or Indiana or Motor City. That's not happening. All right, so please understand that travel practicality is still going to be a factor. The league, by and large, used the geographical pods that I've mentioned in several videos before this to kind of build the bulk of a team's games. So again, Watertown, you're going to see Binghamton and Danbury more than anybody else. But you will also see, most likely, I would say you're definitely seeing 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 of these teams on a fairly regular basis. So it's all good. All right. Now, a lot of people said, "Whoa, Topeka, what's going on?" Now, I do know I don't know details as far as exact dates, but I do know a little bit about Topeka with their schedule. All right. They are going to be playing a decent amount of games against California teams, against the California Three. And that is by their request. They volunteered to help fill in the schedule so that these three teams aren't just playing each other over and over and over and over again. Topeka said, "Hey, we'll make up a lot of their games. We're game. We'll go out there for extended periods of time. Maybe yeah, go out there for 2 or 3 weeks at a time for a long road trip, because that's cheaper than going back and forth and back and forth and back and forth." So this was Topeka's choice to be in this division. It was Topeka's choice to travel to California, probably more than any other team. Again, they volunteered. They said, "We'll do it." So I just want to make sure that is understood. Okay, yeah, they specifically welcomed the opportunity to be able to compete against the three new teams, and yeah, asked to be matched up with those teams whenever it was practical. All right, the uh, so the league mentioned that any team, let's just say Monroe. Okay, they compete obviously within the division, but they also compete uh, in a broader conference identification as well. And there's still going to be cross conference games. Like I said, you're going to have Twin City and Columbus. You're going to have most likely you're going to have Mid South and Indiana, because those two teams are actually fairly close to each other. So you're gonna still have that. It's not like uh, well, it's not like how the NHL used to be, where you only played games in your one conference. After a while, they realized this isn't working, and fans want to see the teams in the other conference. So yeah, so it's all going to work out. The divisions create a competitive framework, but will not limit teams to playing only opponents in their division. Again, that means, for example, Watertown is not going to play the bulk of their games against Indiana, Motor City, and Port Huron. So this arrangement is more so for the purposes of playoffs, which we're going to find out about on Thursday, and we will discuss that on news and notes on the Sunday video. So make sure you're watching, not just for the schedule release where we pick apart the schedule, but also for news and notes. All right, so this is going to foster a lot more competition, a lot more. I think it's going to give more teams a good opportunity to succeed. So yeah, it looks a little strange. It's new. We're not used to it, but I think it's going to work out pretty darn well. So that concludes that, and that is going to end this segment of news and notes and take us right into our big discussion that I've been telling you guys about. So here we are tackling a subject that I'm sure many of you have been wanting me to talk about for quite a while. I know I've made some allusions to it, just the fact that, yeah, there's money that's passed under the table. Yeah, it's no secret, but what do we do about it? All right, so that's what this segment is all about. Why doesn't the league do something about cracking down on the under the table payments? Well, now, first of all, got to specify it. It's not like teams are going, all right, here we go. I'm giving an extra $200 to this player. It's not that blatant. It's obviously done discreetly, but at the same time, it's no secret. The different GMs know it. The different members of the board of governors know it. The executive committee knows it. So why not just say, hey, look, we have a salary cap, fit under it. Everybody's got to fit under it, and even the playing field, so to speak. Well, does it? Does it really even the playing field? Well, that the common perception would be, oh yeah, well that makes a big difference. A lot of people are quick to point out, well, Binghamton, they paid players under the table and, they bought themselves 3 championships. Yes and no. I'll tell you this, from last season, the 2025 to 2026 season, 10 of the 14 teams in the league paid at least 1 player under the table. 10 out of 14. Okay, yes, some teams spent more than others. I can tell you, Binghamton was not the number 1 team as far as who spent what. That was Athens by a long shot. All right. They didn't get a championship 2 years in a row. They paid a lot of money under the table. Monroe paid a lot of money under the table. PD paid a lot of money under the table. It's not a secret. And yes, those were the teams that were among the more successful teams last year, but only 1 team won the championship. That was Binghamton, even though they were outspent by 2 other teams. Yeah, Monroe and Athens spent more than Binghamton last year. Hate to break it to you, but that's the truth. Now, I'm not saying that to justify Binghamton's spending. I'm just saying that obviously Binghamton's not the only one. All right. Already we have teams this year that are putting money under the table. It's going to happen. So the league, chooses to turn a blind eye to it and just don't let us see it. And we'll discuss this. Now, there's really 3 sides to this whole thing. All right. It's not just a yes or no argument. There's really 3 different dynamics in play here, and we're going to talk about that. All right. One of the reasons why, let me rephrase that. The main reason why this happens is because it all boils back down to the fact that I've talked about in past videos. The SPHL and the FPHL are in competition with each other. They are both trying to bring in talent from the same pool. All right. Whether that is first-time pros or multiple-year pros that they played in the ECHL or the SP, whatever. Yeah, they're both leagues are looking at the same players, and now we have 30 teams. Okay, last year it was 24. Now we're up to 30. Well, technically 29 because the Mobile Mystics haven't started operations yet. So, okay, still, we're up another 5 teams that are all trying to bring players into their organization. It's very, very cutthroat, competitive process. All right. The SP has had a step up on the FPHL for a number of years, mainly because don't forget the SP started 6 years before the FPHL did. All right. So the SP has a 6-year jump on, as a single A independent league. They've had that time to build up their reputation, build relationships, especially with the ECHL. Even today, you have just call-ups regardless of the salary cap. Majority of the time, about 70% of the time, if an ECHL team needs somebody, they want to call somebody up, 70% of the time, they're going to go to the SPHL first, and then the Fed if they need to. So that is starting to change. There's starting to be more networking involved between the FPHL and the ECHL. But again, the SPHL has a little bit of a jump. So this is one of the ways that the Fed is trying to even the playing field between the two. Now, when the Fed started, they brought in some former NHL players, some former AHL players, ECHL players, all to try and build themselves up and get noticed. I'm doing a lot of study now with the first few years of the FPHL on my WordPress page. It was cutthroat back then. They were all trying to bring in top talent. Some teams had ECHL affiliations for the first 3 years. There was a loose affiliation. For example, the New Jersey Outlaws / Williamsport Outlaws had the Elmira Jackals as their ECHL affiliate. Really wasn't much interaction in between, but there was some. So it was great. If Elmira needed somebody, the first place they would look is to the Outlaws. Hey, we need a player this weekend. Can you loan us one? That's how it worked. That only lasted for the first 3 years of the Fed. Since then, there's been no affiliations. It's the FPHL is run as an independent league. Now, you go back to 2013, 2014. Back then, the SPHL had 10 teams. The Fed had 4. All right. Some doubted the league would, that the Fed would even survive past that season, but they did. And now there's 17. It's 13 and 17 now officially. So there's a lot more spots available, a lot more demand, a lot more stress on the talent pool. And so, teams are willing to pay to bring in the top talent. All right. As far as the salary cap, here are the numbers for this upcoming season. And I had these numbers verified. For the 2026-2027 season, the salary cap per team per week, the official salary cap, in the SPHL, it's $7,100. In the FPHL, it's gone up from last year was $5,500. This year it is $6,000 even. Now it's good. It's moving up in the right direction, but there's still 1,100 points behind, or $1,100 behind the SPHL. Now at single A, of course, you say to a player, if you're a GM and you want to sign a player and pay them $350 a week, well, you're also paying for housing and per diems when the teams are on the road, and things like that. You're also paying for that. So it's not just a flat, oh, $350 is all you're getting. But obviously, players, yeah, they like to make money if they can. Yeah, it's great that they can play and enjoy doing the thing that they love to do. But yeah, throwing some money, yeah, sure. And they're going to go to where the money is. Now, I am not making any kind of an accusation here. I am just stating as a point. All right, you look at Fresno. Some of the players are signing. Okay, Parker Moscal is having to spend some dollars under the table because $6,000 only takes you so far. Okay, again, that's $6,000 every week. You divide that down, well, 20 players on the roster or 22 players, well, that's still under 300 per week. Obviously, your top tier players, somebody like Austin Albrecht, is going to cost a lot more money than, say, I'm just throwing out a familiar name here that's not at Austin's level, Dalton Anderson. Okay. Albrecht's going to make more money on the books. He's also going to make a lot more money off the books as well. That's just how it works. And I mean, Albrecht, he doesn't have to play in the FPHL. He wants to, not just for the money, I don't think. He and Parker Moscal have a very good relationship. That's why he's in Fresno. But aside from that, Austin is, if he's got a really good opportunity, if somebody from the ECHL said, hey, we'll pay you $2,000 a week, I'm sure you'd be like, Parker, I'm sorry, I gotta go. Parker is not paying $2,000 under the table. That's not happening. Nobody made $2,000 last year, excuse me. I do know a couple of player amounts, which I'm not going to discuss because that's not really anybody's business. Suffice it to say, again, money goes under the table with most of the teams. All right. Again, we don't have a huge gap, but there is an $1,100 deficit compared to the SPHL. So if you want really high talent players, you're gonna pay for it. And that's the way it is. Obviously, the problem is, and I know that a lot of you are screaming at me at your TV or your phone or whatever device you're listening, watching on. You're saying, yeah, but the Binghamtons and the Monroes and the Fresnos can do that easily. The Watertowns in Indiana, they can't do that. Minnesota, they can't do that. That is true. That is entirely true. But we're going to kind of look at this a little bit more, a little bit deeper. It's very easy to look at any topic at just the surface level and make a judgment call. And now you've got your conviction, however you feel about it, right or wrong, yes or no, black or white, money or no money. You have your conviction, you have your opinion. How deeply you've looked into things, I'm sure that varies from person to person. All right. But as far as money being paid under the table, this has been going on since COVID, since the league came back from COVID after the, I'll call it the bubble season. If you refer to the NHL, the year after COVID, they had the bubble season. The FPHL did too. They had the 4 teams playing for the Ignite Cup down in Columbus. And, there were a few games that had people attending the games, but they were very limited in the amount of attendance. So after that point, the next year, which would be Binghamton's first year, the 2021 to 2022 season, yes, teams started slipping a little bit of cash under the table, try and bring in top talent. Now, The plus side of that is we have seen an undeniable increase in the level of play in the FPHL over the last 4 seasons. A dramatic increase in the level of talent, to the point where now there is a debate as far as, well, you know, is the SP really that much better than the FPHL? 5 years ago, oh heck yes, the SPHL was miles better than the FPHL. Now, difference is pretty thin. Even if you say, think the SPHL is still a little bit higher, whereas the gap was this before, now it's here. And that's undeniable. That is just fact by observation. All right. So the pros of this whole thing is, yes, you bring in your top talent, you increase the level of play throughout the league, you create more potential for players to be able to move interchangeably with the Fed, the SP, and the ECHL. Of course, the con is, and we have seen this, there is a greater separation between, as I've called it, the haves and have-nots. You have the Athens, you have the Monroes, you have the Binghamtons, you also have the Dashers, you have the Venom, you have teams that had virtually no extra resources. Of course, they couldn't pay money under the table. All right. And at the end of the year, you look at the standings, and generally the teams that spent more did better. Teams didn't have extra money to spend, they didn't do so well. Those are the obvious pros and cons. But I talked with a few people that were in different positions within the greater hockey community. Some just fans. Some were involved in professional sports. Some were very aware of things going on, but not actively involved. But kind of the media sources and stuff like that knows some stuff that's going on. Okay, I've gotten feedback from different people. Generally speaking, here are some thoughts that have come out. This, paying under the table, it doesn't hurt the owners. It really doesn't. I mean, they have the money to spend. Okay, yeah, you're cutting your profit margin down because you're spending an extra amount under the table. But if you have that capability, that's your choice. Obviously, it doesn't hurt the players. It doesn't hurt the players whether you're Austin Albrecht or Dalton Anderson or anybody else. It doesn't hurt anybody. The only perception is by the fans and the hockey community, well, this hurts the game. Well, maybe not. It does limit the quality of talent that small market teams like Watertown, Minnesota, Indiana, to use as an example, are able to get, in a way. All right. Now, okay, if you're Brett Clark, Watertown, well, you're not able to play with a whole bunch of extra money to slip under the table. So you've got to be wiser in your recruiting. You've got to be more thorough in your scouting and your talent evaluation. Well, I'm using Brett Clark here as an example because Brett Clark is a whiz at that. All right. He has years and years and years of experience with networking and scouting and talking to people who, they'll call him and say, hey, got a player that I think you really want to check into. Here's his elite prospect stats. Here's this, here's that. I can send you some footage of this guy playing. That happens. not just with Brett Clark. It happens with other coaches slash GMs as well. But now, okay, yeah, Indiana, Watertown, Minnesota, they've got to do that more thoroughly. But if you have someone who is skilled in that area, it doesn't matter if you're coaching Minnesota or Monroe. You're gonna be able to find the gems. All right. Obviously, some are better at that than others. Okay, so another thought: paying extra money does make it hard for the top talent to maybe take opportunities in other leagues. Um, I'm going to make up something completely fabricated. As a matter of fact, I'm going to use someone that is retired. All right, just to not throw anybody under the bus inadvertently. Okay, let's say Tyler Jurich. All right, he's getting paid an extra $300 a week under the table to play in the FPHL. All right, Norfolk Admirals called. Oh man, are they called Norfolk or Hampton Roads? I don't even remember anymore. Anyway, let's say the Admirals call it. Hey, Tyler, we got a spot for you if you want it. Well, what are you paying? Okay, the average pay is about $600 a week. George looks at his numbers. Okay, I'm making $300 on top of the table, the on the books, and I'm also making $300 under the table. I'm making $600 now. Why would I move? Why would I uproot myself and live in a hotel for a time or move to another apartment for a time when I've got a good situation here in the Fed? All right, that kind of stuff can happen. Or in some cases, okay, let's say Jurich is making $500 under the table. Not only is making $800 total, Norfolk's offering him $600. Well, nah, I'm not going to do that. That can happen, and that's true. And maybe they'd be better suited for the higher league, but again, the decision is theirs. Ultimately, this all boils down to the player. The player has the right to make the decision whether he plays in Topeka or in Rapid City in the ECHL. They can play in Fresno or they can play with Ontario. Okay, that's their choice. All right. If they have the opportunity and the resume to be able to grab those opportunities, the decision is completely up to them, and it should stay that way. I am convinced of that. We might say, well, it just seems kind of unfair that you have somebody like CJ Stubbs, who, he's, who knows how much money he's making, but, he's wiping the floor with everybody here in the FPHL. He should be trying to play in the ECHL. Well, maybe, but maybe CJ Stubbs doesn't want to play in the ECHL, regardless of the money. That has to be taken into consideration as well. Some teams have been more successful than others, regardless of how much money they've spent. For example, just looking at last year, Binghamton, they won themselves their third championship in a row. Athens, who spent a lot more money than Binghamton, ended up with a first-round exit. Again, had 2 years in the Fed and 2 first-round exits. So was it worth it? You could say probably not, but, again, we're just outsiders looking in. Athens, the people involved in decision-making and paying the players, again, that's their decisions. So you can kind of say, well, maybe you're spending more money, but is it to your own benefit? Maybe not. All these things that you really have to consider. The smaller teams now, if again, and I'm not picking on Fresno. I'm just using it as an example because I think it's pretty clear with the caliber of players that Parker Mescal is bringing in and signing. Okay. And I'm not saying he's paying everybody. I'm not making any kind of assumption on that. All right. I want to make that perfectly clear because I don't know how much Moscal is paying Albrecht or Rodebush or anybody else for that matter. I don't know that information. I don't even know. I don't know. Well, nobody knows what they're going to make because standard contracts haven't even been signed yet. The only thing being signed right now is PTOs. So we know Austin Albrecht's going to be in Fresno. We know Austin Rodebush is going to be there. Okay, fine. How much are they going to make? We don't know right now. We don't know. We don't even know the on the books total they're going to make. And that information doesn't come to us fans anyway. So, all right. Where was I? Oh, yeah. If you take Fresno and you look at the big names that Parker's able to bring in, question his methods if you want to. The fact remains he's bringing in these players. Now let's look at Brett Clark, Watertown. He's not bringing in players that have played 5-6 years in the ECHL. He's not bringing in players that have lit the SP on fire. All right. So now Brett Clark, because Parker and other GMs are all signing these big names, now Brett can look at his talent pool, his scouting list for everyone that he's looking at with the ACHA, Division 3, maybe even Division 1, Tier 2 juniors, maybe even major juniors. He's looking at all that and he's like, well, these other teams don't want these guys. Now I've got more opportunities to bring in people, first-time pros, that I have full confidence that they're going to perform really, really well at this level because I've scouted them. I've seen how well they do. I've seen their talents and abilities. These other teams signing the big names, they're not even looking at these guys. So now here they are, ripe for the picking for me. Now I can get them. So it really doesn't hurt the small market teams like you would think. The teams are going to get their talent. They're going to get their players in. Again, yes, some are going to be better at recruiting than others. But I think we've seen that there are now more experienced coaches and GMs in the FPHL who know how to do that thing very well. And so I think the talent level across the board, whether you're paying players or not under the table, the talent level again this year is going to go up. And personally, I think this next year is going to be the best year as far as quality of play that the FPHL has ever had. I'm pretty confident of that. And some other people that I have talked to that are in the know also feel the same way. To close this segment out, I know this has been a little bit longer, but hey, we only got 2 segments. Well, kind of 3 because we're dividing the news segments up. It's going to be a shorter video, so let's play with this a little bit. All right. These are my educated guesses. I can't say I know this for an absolute fact. These are my educated guesses as far as 4 categories. We're going to create 4 different categories of teams in the FPHL. First category, they're paying several players under the table. Second category, they're paying a few, 3, 4, maybe 5 players. Third category, they're paying at least 1. There's one guy that's getting a little bit extra. Most everybody else fits under the cap, but yeah, you get some. And then fourth category is what I would guess would be there's nobody getting extra money. Everybody's on the books. Everything is legitimately legit. All right. And under the category of paying several players, these are my guesses. I would think this next year, the teams that are doing that, Monroe, Mid-South, Binghamton, Fresno, and of course, like I said, if they were still in the Fed and said the SP, both Athens and PD, paying a few. There's a few guys getting some extra. Blue Ridge, Columbus, Topeka, and Stockton. I would guess. Again, don't take this as I'm telling you this is how it is. This is only my guess. Paying at least one player, Danbury, possibly Watertown, Twin City, Motor City, Port Huron, and Oceanside. I think the odds are very strong that there's one guy, maybe two, that are getting some extra. And then there's three teams that I have that no, they're probably not paying anybody under the table, and that would be Indiana, Minnesota, and Baton Rouge. Again, just based on some conversations that I have had with people behind the scenes. Again, I'm not going to reveal anything as far as who I talk to or what teams or anything like that. That's just, it's not happening. But those are my guesses. I cannot say I know for an absolute fact, for example, that Indiana is not going to pay anybody under the table. All right. I don't know that for an absolute fact. This is just my guess. I don't know how many people Mid-South is going to pay under the table. I think it's quite a few, but again, so you can take these categories and say, oh, well, that kind of, dictates how they end up in the standings. Well, not necessarily, because, for example, I've got under the category of paying one, maybe two, Port Huron. All right. Port Huron's one of the better clubs in the league. That's a fact. They've made a serious push for the finals the last 2 years, fallen a little bit short, but they are in the upper echelon of teams in the Fed. I think they're going to be again this next year, but they're not paying 7, 8, 9 players extra money. They're not. Watertown is going to be greatly improved this year. I think a lot of people are going to be taken by surprise with how much better Watertown is going to be this year. Yes, just based on the fact that Brett Clark is a coach. Brett knows systems. He knows how to get the players to all be on the same page, doing the right things, playing better. Plus, he's brought in some better talent than Watertown had last year. So, Watertown, I think, is going to be very competitive this year. They're not paying a whole bunch of people. I think Indiana is going to be a lot better this year. I'm thinking they're not paying anybody. Are they going to make the playoffs? Hard to say. I think they have a shot. So, there you go. Money does not necessarily buy championships. I know everybody looks at the Dallas Cowboys and, well, okay, we don't look at the Cowboys because the Cowboys haven't won any championships. Sorry, Bob. But the New York Yankees, all the big name teams in major sports, they're buying championships, but it really doesn't work that way on the minor league level. So anyway, again, sorry, Bob, but it's true. Anyway, I don't follow football, so it doesn't even matter. Anyway, so those are some thoughts on on this whole topic. You have, well, one side is this is all really bad. It's unfair for certain teams. You have the other side that everything kind of balances out. And then there's the third side. And I kind of tend to be more on this third side that, well, yeah, there are certain difficulties that some teams have to face that other teams don't because of the money factor, but they still have ample opportunity to be very competitive and very good and improve their team. So those are the three sides that you really have to look at. Yeah, the money helps, but again, how many championships did Athens win? All right, closing out the show with some news recapping. A lot of announcements from Wednesday. Wednesday ended up being a lot busier of a day than I kind of expected. And that was partially because of an extra announcement by the FPHL. But let's review what happened on Wednesday. Of course, the first thing was in the daily announcement all this week that the FPHL was making. They are going to go back to the 2-point system. 2 points for a win of any type, a point for an overtime loss or a shootout loss, and you lose in regulation 0. So this is what a lot of people in like the AHL and the NHL call the loser point, which that's a bit of an exaggeration. But and when I say the league is going back to it, the league actually did operate under the 2-point system in its first season. And starting with the second until last year, they've gone to the international 3-point system. But they want to align more closely with the NHL. They've already started to do that. They started doing that last year with the rule book, making a lot of rules uniform to the NHL, minus the trapezoid for the goalies. And they wanted to go back to this. It's kind of peculiar and ironic that less than a month after the SPHL announces they're going to the 3-point system, the FPHL goes, we're going back to 2. So that'd be humorous. All right. So basically, it's going to make things look a little simpler. And you're not going to have the bloated point totals. As an example, if you looked at last year's records, where everyone finished, going by their wins, losses, overtime, and shootout losses. All right, Binghamton ended up with 143 points. If you're just operating by the 2-point system, they would have had 98, which is still fantastic, incredible. But so you're not going to see teams with 100 plus points in the standings anymore. It just, again, it kind of helps make things a little bit more uniform with the with the other leagues. Now, personally, I like the 3-point system. I thought it would add a little bit more urgency to players wanting to try and win games in regulation, because you have a chance to get your regulation wins going. You separate yourselves pretty quickly from the rest of the pack. And that's what the Fed looked at. Now, the important thing to realize is that if you go back to last year's standings, as far as where teams finished in order in divisions, Binghamton, Port Huron, and so on and so forth. And then, Athens, Monroe, Columbus, PD. Nobody would change places in the standings. The standings would still be exactly the same. All right. So this really doesn't affect the standings per se. It's more of an aesthetic type of thing, an optics type of thing, really. But so, still, we get used to things. So, like I said, I like the 3-point system. So this is going to be an adjustment for me. It is what it is. But anyway, so that happened. Then we had, actually, right before that announcement came out, we had the announcement about the Baton Rouge Kingfish. Yes, the Kingfish name is back. Not quite the same logo as it was from years ago. It's a new, fresh logo, but I really like the little touch of green in the highlights of the letters, and of course the nice aqua blue. So yeah, I like it. The jersey that was shown during the press conference yesterday was not the jersey that the players are going to wear. They were not able to get the actual jerseys done in time. And so, okay, well, here's an example. Here's how the logo looks on a white jersey, a pretty simple white jersey. And yeah, it's pretty nice. But anyway, so the name and the jersey are back. We know from the announcement that was made last weekend, Jimmy Soper is the head coach. The GM was going to be announced. Unfortunately, both Soper and the GM flying into into Baton Rouge for the press conference. Apparently, both of them ended up getting ill and were not able to attend the press conference. So the general manager will be introduced at a later time. They haven't determined when that is yet. But anyway, there is a separate GM. Jimmy Soper is not the GM, but he's the head coach. All right, so anyway, that will be coming sooner rather than later. So really now, the only team to not have a logo and whatnot is the Oceanside FPHLers, and hopefully they'll create something pretty quick so I can stop saying that. Okay, now the last thing that I really want to dig into here. Oh, I'm sorry. Before I do that, this upcoming Sunday, the Minnesota Northern Lights are going to reveal their jerseys to the public. So there are jerseys out there that are specifically for the fans, kind of a special inaugural season type of deal. I'm sure that the actual uniforms are going to be close. They'll probably be similar, but I think there will be some differences with the actual jerseys. So watch for that this Sunday, the 26th. Okay. The last thing we want to talk about, and I'm only going to touch on this because it is a lot to absorb. If you saw, there was another announcement made by the FPHL on the Fed website before they made the announcement about the point system for this upcoming year. And that was an extensive release of FPHL integrity and compliance guidelines. Included in this, and it's kind of ironic that this happened right after I recorded that big segment about why doesn't the league do something about the salary cap? Well, they just did. I did not know that this was going to be happening. So, this video is already kind of obsolete, but there were still some very valid points that we discussed in that segment. And so now we have a set of guidelines for the league becoming more accountable, more compliant to one set of standards, and they're looking to build up their integrity, to build up their reputation. This is again part of where we've evidently, obviously, had a change in the FPHL leadership. Remember, it's not Don Kiernan that is calling the shots right now. This is the Committee for League Operations, which is Andreas Johansson, Ken Andrews, and Jeff Crew, and working together with the Board of Governors. So, the league is really striving to improve its image, recognizing, yes, we've had some issues in the past. Our reputation hasn't always been the best. We're building something good. The league's growing, expanding, getting better at what it does, but there are some changes that need to be made, and they're made. So it's so extensive. It's a very extensive read, and I honestly did not get a chance to go through it in detail. So next Saturday, August the 1st, that is going to be our topic of discussion, talking about this FPHL integrity and compliance guideline standard. And we'll break everything down in this announcement, because again, it was a lot, including a list of ethics and whatnot. So yeah, very important stuff. It just this week is getting away from me, and like I said, don't have a chance to really dig into it. So we will do that next Saturday. Make sure to tune in. That is going to be our big discussion. Of course, our next video is going to be Sunday. Sunday, we are specifically going to talk about the schedule, picking it apart, going over it with a fine-tooth comb, really dissecting it and breaking it down. How many divisional games is your team playing? How often are you seeing your your closest rival? How many interconference games are you playing? How much travel, especially out to California? We're going to go over all of that. Again, I knew I wasn't going to have the time to really get into detail on this video, and that's why we're doing a second video. That will be on Sunday. I do have a commitment on Saturday, and so I need the time Friday and Saturday to go over this and dig all the little kernels out of it, and we'll talk about it. So make sure to tune in. All right, we're going to close off this video and kind of not do the usual outro. We'll just kind of add it here. Always remember, anytime you want to send me a comment, a question, you have an idea, or you're just curious about something, send me an email. The address, fedflash15@gmail.com. Also, if you are interested in establishing a sponsorship through the show, please contact me. We can definitely work with things, and do have a sponsor coming on Sunday, our first sponsor. Moving forward, if you're interested in sponsoring the whole video or part of the video, please contact me. Okay, always remember, we are here on YouTube, of course. Please make sure to like, subscribe, share, hit the notification bell, so when I go and release the video talking about the schedule, you'll be able to pull it up right away and watch it. All right. Always remember, everything's broken down in the segments. Just hit that little more down below. Actually, it's on this side for me. I always forget. YouTube is this way. Facebook is that way. Anyway, hit more, and then you will get the list of all your Actually, no, I think I'm dyslexic today. Anyway, once you hit more, you'll see all the timestamps come up from different channels. Click on the channel you are the chapter that you want to go to, and it'll take you right there. Also, follow me on Facebook. As the news happens, it gets printed there, and then we talk about it here. And make sure to check out my WordPress page. We're doing a lot on Fed history, talking about the first 5 years of the league. This weekend, I'm printing an article about what happened to the Cape Cod Griffins. So, if you don't know who that is, well, check out the Fed history page and find out. The address for that is fedleagueflash9.wordpress.com. All right, that's it. And this ended up being a little longer than I expected, so it all works out. Okay, thank you so much for watching. Very much appreciate it, whether you watched just a part of the video or the whole thing. Very much appreciate you tuning in. And make sure to check out future videos, especially this coming Sunday. I am Gary Ryan for the Fed East Flash. Until next time, always remember to keep your head up, keep your stick on the ice, and you know what it is. Be excellent to each other. All right. Hey, we'll see you next time. Thank you for being with me here.